All new at 5:30, world leaders are working desperately to curb global warming before some say entire nations are wiped off the map. We're going to talk live with a Knoxville environmentalist in Copenhagen right now. Plus, healing and helping. We're going to be live downtown where your donations in the name of a Central High School shooting victim are helping kids in need. 6 News at 5:30 starts right now.
Live from the news station, WATE TV Knoxville, this is 6 News at 5:30.
Good evening, everyone. We begin tonight with two big stories we have been following and insight from one man from right here in East Tennessee. First, heads of state from nearly 200 countries are meeting in Copenhagen right now to hammer out a climate deal. Now, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is there and President Obama is expected in just a few hours. Now, today, talks focused on an international fund that would help the poorest and most vulnerable nations address climate changes, a fund the U.S. has now agreed to join. And closer to home, an environmental disaster on a much smaller scale, but one that made a big impact here in our area. We're talking, of course, about the TVA ash spill in Roane County. At 5 o'clock, we showed you this new video as the cleanup process is just 5 days away from the one-year mark. Tonight, we turn to one man who can go more in depth on both of these issues. We are joined live now via Skype with Stephen Smith. He is with the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy based right here in Knoxville. And Stephen, you're in Copenhagen right now. We've talked to you so many times before as you kept us up to date, on the TVA ash spill. But right now, we want to start off with the climate conference in Copenhagen. Let's talk a little bit about what is your role there, and have you been able to get inside any of the discussions so far?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's a great opportunity to talk to you. Yeah, my role here is both as the Executive Director of the Southern Alliance for Clean Energy and then also my role with the U.S. Climate Action Network. We coordinate a lot of the non-governmental organizations that are here. The U.S. Climate Action Network does, working with CAN International, Climate Action Network International. And I have been in the first 3 days. I was in the Bella Center where a lot of the discussions were going on. They have clamped down more on security, and so today and tomorrow they're much more restrictive on letting non-governmental organizations in because of the security concerns around the heads of state being there. But it's a very exciting conference. We're seeing, again, like you said, almost 200 leaders from around the world. It's the first time this many world leaders have been there. It's also the first time that the United States president has actually joined the discussion, so we look forward to President Obama. The announcement from Secretary of State Clinton today was very significant. And as you said in the lead-in, there are a number of nations, particularly island nations. I heard a number of their leaders giving very impassionate pleas. Their countries are literally going underwater because of sea level rise, wiping out their cultures. And so it's a very significant issue, not only for them, but also for us at home.
You know, Stephen, some people are calling any sort of pact really an empty agreement coming out of this conference. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think that some sort of resolution is actually going to be reached?
Well, I don't think it's going to be enough. I think that the fact that there are a lot of unanswered questions still remain is significant. But the fact that we have the world leaders here, the fact that both India and China now are finally stepping up, while they may not be willing to agree to binding agreements, China is putting a lot on the table now about what they're going to do. And they have actually surpassed the United States in their emissions. And so that's very significant. And if we don't get serious in this country about addressing this, a number of other countries are going to overtake us in the clean tech, low carbon technologies. China's making more solar panels. They've overtaken us now in wind development. They're overtaking us in some other areas. And so for job creation and job growth, we need to actually take this serious, and we need to unleash the innovation in this country to really address this issue. And I think that's going to mean getting the rules of the road right. So President Obama is going to have a big task tomorrow to try to close the talks and come home with some sort of a deal. But I think there's going to be a lot more yet to be done in the coming months.
Stephen, we could clearly talk about this probably for the whole half hour, but I do need to ask you about the ash spill. We are nearing that one-year mark for that terrible disaster in Roane County. We've been talking about it all day here in East Tennessee. Tell me a little bit, do you think that enough is really being done out there to clean that up?
Well, look, this is the largest industrial spill in the history of the United States. I do believe that TVA has been doing what needs to be done to get the ash out of the river. I think they are aggressively trying to pull the ash out of the Emery River. Unfortunately, that's only half of the problem. There is still a lot of ash that broke out of TVA's containment that is all through the embayments. TVA doesn't have a plan right now what to do with that. That's a huge outstanding question. And then unfortunately, the Environmental Protection Agency today actually announced that they are delaying their coal ash regulations. If they had been regulating coal ash as a hazardous waste, this would not have happened. So there's still a lot of unfinished business that needs to be done there. But I have to say that I give TVA some credit for the movement that they are to get the ash out of the river. That's the most significant problem I think we face right now. But my heart goes out to those.
I'm sorry, we probably have time for one last quick question here. Concerning those regulations, that is something that came to the forefront as soon as this spill happened. What would you like to see in terms of coal ash regulations in the future?
Well, I think there's two things. One, TVA has committed that by 2020 they will phase out all of their wet storage of coal ash. I think that's an important step. But what has to happen is the Environmental Protection Agency has to pass rules to make sure that this never happens, and they need to control and regulate this coal ash so that utilities can't get away with the slack practices that led to this. That's the missing link right now. TVA is taking some important steps, but the Environmental Protection Agency hasn't followed through. When I testified in January before Barbara Boxer's committee last year, or earlier this year, both Lisa Jackson and Senator Boxer said that they would have these coal ash regulations by the end of the year, and today's announcement from EPA is not a good sign.
All right, Stephen, I wish we had more time tonight, but thank you so much for your insight on both of these topics. And
well, thanks for the opportunity.
No problem. And of course, we will have much more on the anniversary of the TVA ash spill, everyone, coming up tonight right here on 6 News at 6.